Mic check. Welcome to the channel. This is Reliable Rudy. Before we get started with any technical analysis, you guys know I'm not a licensed financial advisor. Everything in this live stream is me simply sharing my opinion, trying to give you guys some entertainment, trying to make a little bit of money in the process. So let's go right into it. I left three of the same tickers on from yesterday: LCID, RBLX, and AFRM. So let's just go over those real quick, and then we'll get into anything today. I think LCID, playing around with this level, I did have an add into it, averaged up in the middle of this green candle. And all we did, I left this same alert in to kind of show you guys that, hey, we were playing underneath these lows. We were going to give it all the ways down to 1675s to try and hold. It got as low as 82s. I don't know what it got to in the after hours, but uh, I had to leave, so it's not like I can monitor it at every given time. So for all I knew, this was gonna crack this trend line yesterday and go all the ways down. I've been trying to run deeper stops on some of these plays, and I'm gonna switch it to a daily chart. I'm gonna show you why. Uh, I think this was a reasonable level to try and put a stop. It's trying to build this sort of trend line after this run, and I'm going to show you this retracement level from down here to up here, just holding this 618. So it's wicked into it a few times, and I was giving it this trend line and said, hey, if we crack down, we could easily have some sort of move down into further into this green move. While holding that level, regaining 7, and now testing that sort of flat top is really what I had in mind from the start. But now yesterday with it, here's your opening candle yesterday. It acted like it wanted to break out at this level, giving you that sort of double top from this range, selling off, rejecting the level. You had this descending channel. Uh, whoops. You had this descending channel that tried to crack early. It trades sideways, and you get one more leg down. But the support holds. Look at where we fall to. We trade underneath of it, but all in all, we just tested this sort of initial break from the level that it started moving from. And here's your 7 break, of course. So reclaiming that on the first candle, following it up with the next candle. We're going to see if we can get a breakout on this name. I think it's a reasonable setup for it to get some continuation. And the continuation I'm going to be looking for. Uh, you guys hear me talk about strength and playing around with this middle ground. Well, getting that true positive break and then a leg up, I believe that true positive break where the longs are trying to get in is in this middle ground right here. So if the price is able to move higher, one, this gap is filled. Two, I think you could easily run this for at least 8. I shouldn't say at least 8, but I am going to be respecting this gap for some outs if we do get the price movement that I'm looking for. But if we're able to get on top of 8 and hold over 8, I don't think it's out of the question to see it run for these two lows right here, and then we get that flat bottom break. I don't think it's out of the question for it to make a run for this 10. So if we're talking about early entries down here, playing around with these highs, even though it's been acting as resistance, eventually that resistance can possibly get broken. That's what we're going to be looking for. So just from this range up to that $10 gap, we're looking at a 38% swing, and that's what I'm going to be looking for. Whether I trim some levels on the way up, my goal is to hold a piece for at least that move. And if we get to 10, I'm going to be telling myself, hey, I think I can get it higher, but we're going to respect 10. So that is LCID. Going back to this 15-minute chart, I think it's a reasonable setup. These first two candles getting increasing volume on these two open candles right here, leaving a nice green engulfing candle, a little bit of a wick of selling, but that's probably people respecting this sort of neckline top. Let's see if we can get over top of this. So that's LCID. RBLX, we didn't even really run a stop, but playing again with this 40 level. And I'm going to stay with the same thesis, is that it's trying to build this sort of flat top. As soon as it can start breaking over top of this 40-25, I think you're going to have some long sitting in right here. And the quick scalpers are going to be saying, hey, we can at least test up to this 40-50. I can scalp 20-25 cents from this breakout level, get a percent, okay. But I think that the move is really setting up, and just looking at this trend line, how it's been able to hold this. It had a little bit of a false breakout this morning to the downside, but buyers coming in off of that trend line on the opening candle. I think that this is a reasonable setup, and this one is actually going to be more of an early entry. You see how we get that negative break to the downside? That is why it's going to be more on my mind to trim into some of these levels, because you have a more of a red move to the downside down to that trend line. If it isn't able to, fight over, let's just say 42s. And the reason why I say 42s is it was a flat top. You have some wick lows right here. If we start rejecting up into that area, this could easily crack this trend line. And before you know it, we're trading back down to these gaps down here, 34, 35 to 34 half. So it is one that I'm going to have to be careful with, in my opinion. But being above those 40s, you can see that sort of flat top that's setting up is going to be the day's high from yesterday. So if we can put that green candle and start moving into the middle of the red move, that is going to be what I'm looking for in this play. And then last but not least, Affirm. I am going to be kicking myself talking about this a little bit because we were on live stream talking about it. It tapped 1850, and we said that we thought we can get a bigger move. And now looking at it at 1732 with no fills on the name yesterday. We had a beautiful entry playing this sort of, we looked at it as sort of a neckline break, but then it was able to break higher than those wick highs, hold that as support. Now we kind of have this descending channel that we are fighting. Whether that's a perfectly set channel or not, that's what we're working with. But we do have a decent trend line here. So I, from an initial entry of 14, it's not going to be something that I'm going to, and we only had a couple fills on it, reloads from trimming it up in these 1850 areas. So those are the three that I'm looking at. And I'm sure there is more. The big mover for today, and for anybody who says there isn't anything to do with gaps or they don't like respecting gaps, this is SIMO. Just a simple gap fill through a small order out there. I don't have much size on this, so I'm not really trying to brag. But I looked at this as a fundamentally sound company. We started trying to buy this in those 60 at that 60 range, and then we a couple times in those middle 50s. And the reason being, I'm going to show you. I just simply used a retracement tool, and those upper 50s. When we were trying this, we were trying it off of this 702 and we were trying it off of this 786, and we were holding it against us. It's like, okay, I think this is more of a fundamentally sound company. Semiconductor companies have been running very well, and we just tried a small order off of this, which if you move this over, it was clear support that it had at these 50s. A small order off the gap, and we get a 40 or a $40 gap up on a name that's already trading at $50. Insane gap up. Not I Especially the day after it just fills the gap. I haven't seen anything on their earnings report, so maybe there's something to do with that. Maybe they reported it in the pre-market when they're supposed to report in the after hours. I don't know. And then of course, looking at the top movers for today, uh, Pack W, we still have the KRE, so I could have threw that in the title. Uh, but we're thinking that since it's able to kind of gap up over top of this trend line, I'm not going to move these trend lines because I'm getting better at trying to trust what I'm drawing. And right here, I think these tops say it for himself as it's kind of been following this. Well, now it's gapped up and wicking into the top of it. I don't see why I can't get the 50-70 gap. Maybe it has to trade down a little bit before it goes for it, but if it can start running, maybe the start of the gap is where I take another trim. So 49s to 49.30s is going to be that next area that we're looking for. So not the most amount of size, so I don't really want to just be super quick at trimming that position down, especially if I think it has a catalyst or a reasoning for wanting to move higher. And of course, nickel, I know yesterday was a big red day. It was actually percent-wise the lowest, the worst stock in my portfolio. But from this 150 break, I still don't have a reason to sell it. And with the hold of 2 from yesterday, I'm just going to keep going for the hold. I, all I want to see it do is just hold that 2 level, and hopefully, if I'm lucky, we get that 3 break, which if you look over to the left, that 3 is, it's at 290 that I would say this sort of resistance is at. So that's going to be respected. If it ever gets back up to that range or anywhere close, we are going to continue trying the trim nickel. But if we get that break at 3, we don't see why, we don't think it's out of the question for it to maybe make an attempt up. I would say this was kind of a flat bottom break, but the resistance that it's seeing is near that 4. So trading down near these 2s, we still think it has potential run for close to 100%. And then this one's going to hurt talking about is T-Doc. We had this name. Beautiful entries. The day before, playing around with this 25 level, it gaps up. We took no outs on it because we said to ourselves, hey, we like this sort of flat top break that it had. We think it can hold this support. Well, then it rejects it to the downside and comes all the ways back in. We stop out of this name underneath the wick low. I told you guys in the beginning that we've been playing with deeper stop losses. So for me, I was saying, hey, I bought this candle. We're going to give it the wick low of this candle. We get stopped out. And I was really debating playing that. You can see my line that I had drawn in yesterday. I was really debating playing this level yesterday, but I was like, man, earnings are coming up. All it would take is a gap down below these earnings, or below these lows, and get some continuation to the downside, or you have some levels to the left of the chart that you can go off of. And the one that I had in mind was this one off of 2090. Uh, so this could have been an area where I maybe tried buying the knife, but all in all, I didn't really get the greatest look at the earnings report. I just skimmed through them a little bit. But everything that you'd want to see, reasonable revenue growth. They put up solid margins. They are cash flow positive on a GAAP basis. They're still not quite there, but for it to have a 20% move. When we were just playing this over here, we get stopped out and we're thinking about playing it off of this support. This kind of just reminds me of Ford. Obviously, Ford didn't move this fast, but just the way that it's been able to hold this support down here in these low 20s, it's really going to hurt not having that entry. And I would say Tilray is a name that we are going to be continuing to watch going forward for today. A lot of volume coming in. I haven't looked at the earnings report, so maybe there's something involved with that. But all in all, we think that this setup is a reasonable setup for a potential ascending channel. And the reason being is because you get this wick top and it holds in around this 2 level, and then you get that green candle following up that takes out that high. So one indecision candle, and now we're just trying to hold these 2. So I'd say a reasonable entry, you could try it in off 2, give it 10 cents down below the wick low. If it gives up the wick low, maybe we have to retrace back down to this sort of flat top that it was building. So it depends on if you'd want to hold it in 9% to the downside. Even if you just wanted to run a tighter stop at like a 195, I think giving it the body of this candle, so the closer you get to 2, give it 5-7 cents or so, I think it's a reasonable setup. And of course, the alpha in the room would have to be Google. Google's earnings, uh, you know, there was some senior options analyst on this one thing that was talking about Google compared to Microsoft earnings, and she basically just discredited everything to do with Google and said Microsoft, 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 Microsoft. And I said, why would you be thinking Microsoft over Google? That's that's the first thing that goes to my head, is because, I mean, just looking at from a financial standpoint, Google year over year bought back 343 million shares back. Think about that for a second. Think about the capital that they're reinvesting back into their shareholders. High margin, no debt, blue chip company that's not going away anytime soon. You put up that type of earnings report, it's a no-brainer. Well, then you look at Microsoft. Well, Microsoft only bought back 4 million shares. You see, it's sort of the disconnect. But looking at Microsoft, I haven't even really looked at it today, but also Microsoft stock has been through the roof. Where I think Google has kind of underperformed some of those blue chip companies, which is why I don't see how you could have sat there and said, yeah, we want to see Microsoft, 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 but we're not going to give Google any credit. It didn't make sense to me. But yes, we are long Google. And not interested in selling any shares after looking at their earnings report. We think that we can just hold that entry that we built and go for the best. But sitting in around that 93 entry, there's no reason. We've already respected up toward these levels. Now we're gapping up over these highs, which is really fighting through these lows. Where Google really had these lows that tried to hold right here, you can see that's what it was really trying to fight to get through. Well, now that it's over it, if it was a retracement that you were looking at, you were coming in off this 702, which I think is deadly. But just with all this being said, being over this wick top, I think is a big positive catalyst for the chart. Not saying anything about the earnings report at all, but I don't see why you couldn't run it up to this next retracement. Whether it needs to trade back in or not, I think it's a reasonable setup. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, let's go take a look back over at this Lucid, which I would say is kind of just barcoding sideways a little bit, but still able to hold this green volume. Uh, kind of it actually has an ascending flag right here, uh, that's trying maybe to build this flat top right around this area over here, building this tight little wedge. Maybe it needs to trade back into the middle of this green move before it makes the move, but this is a type of setup that I like. Well, looking around. KRE still holding, uh, putting in this green candle, engulfing the second pullback candle. Uh, More of a red engulfing, then a little bit more indecision with a wick on each side. Now starting to show movement to the upside. So if this gets up to anywhere close to 49, I think we are going to take a piece on that today. Let's look around some more. Let's see if we can spot anything else before we really hone in and try to find something. Let's get a refresh on the top movers. And this is why with the Lucid trade, I'm really not interested in trying to be quick to sells, because look at you got XPEV that's been ripping. Let's switch over to the daily. XPEV actually gapping over top of this channel, bullish as can be. Uh, if you had an entry off this positive break, you're playing around over here. So here's your positive break. You test in near the entry, and it was building this flat top. And from this 11, we're already up almost 100% from that 11 flat top. So comparing the flat top from XPEB to Lucid, now I'm not saying that is credible for why Lucid's going to break out. I'm just saying that, if there was any type of profit takes or some relief rally for that space, I think that Lucid's chart is really setting up for something like that. But then you also look at Neo. Neo has been respected this channel, and now kind of breaking through that ascending channel and getting in towards this resistance up here towards this 13 half, but also testing in near the down or the top of the downtrend. It's been following this channel to the downside. We always talked about Neo as, it's following this descending channel. We tried playing long positive breaks before on this name. The notable one would probably be right in around this 12 level. We tried it. We ended up getting stopped out every single time we tried it. And we never tried it as it kept going lower, because we always thought, hey, we got this $5 gap meeting in at this sort of neckline right here. We thought that we could get 550 to 6. But just looking at the move in some of these EV names, we don't see why Lucid couldn't catch a bid. And with it trying to build this flat top, we think if it gets over 730, 730 is going to be the magic number on this name. Just my opinion. But I do think it's a reasonable long setup. I've always talked about the big players are playing around this middle. in my opinion, of course. And if you're looking at the true positive break on this entry, it's right around the 690 to 7 range, and this is that sideways action that we've been getting right here. So kind of just a back and forth game. I've each time I've tried building the position, I'm trying not to let it stop me out because each one of those that have stopped me out, they they've just been some monster moves. And I didn't even talk about Rivian. I mean, Rivian, look at this same flat top that Rivian was kind of setting up, and then here's your positive break. You see how it's just hovering around that positive break right there. Just looking at the commodity, here's your positive break. Big players head around here. Well, it rejects it. It rejects it again. Well, now we're confirmed positive. We pull right back into the level of the initial positive break. Now we pull back under a little bit, but look at this flat top. And I remember the day like it was yesterday. It was this day right here. We gapped up. We set a close above that flat top and we gap up next day, and it hasn't turned back since. I regret not trading this day because I was being greedy saying, hey, we can get it back in towards this gap. Well, it sometimes it just doesn't wait. So if you want that entry before it makes the monster move, I think playing in around trying to get that breakout of these flat tops is the way I'm going about it. So I am going to keep odd on watch. I don't think it's just primed, ready to break out. We don't really have enough information yet, but I do think that it has a reasonable chart set up for maybe a potential ascending channel from its IPO price. We would be in this name already if it IPO'd where it was supposed to be, but it didn't. It IPO'd about $20 higher. But all in all, we do want to keep odd on watch. RBLX still playing in around this 40 range. Couple wicks on this pullback. Wicks into the level, full green engulfing candle up to the flat top that it's trying to build. And now pulling back in. Is it going to be able to take out 40-20s today? I don't know. You're going to find out. And of course, Xzilla, that was the trimmer that we've been sort of having. But this is also a strong chart setup. We did have a top print yesterday of 575. It got as high as 78, which I think we're going to be respecting the top end of this channel. And if we're lucky, we can get a breakup over that channel. But being able to set a close above these wicks yesterday, I think uh, was a big hold for the name. Now just trying to hold for some continuation. We didn't have any reloads on the name, but we think that if it can show us that continuation, up to that 6 level is that next level that we want to trim. If it wants to pull back in, we're going to be playing this flat top. We have the trims above this sort of flat top right here to be able to reload in towards 535, 525. So that's what we're going to be looking for with Zila and Docs. I was a little upset to see this go up today, but probably a uh, re relief rally. I don't know if that's the right term, but they're kind of in that same space as T-Doc. So T-Doc being up 20%, I don't see why there'd be any other reason for a nice green candle like this. But looking at the retracement, this should be around that 702 as well. Not quite, but this is really where we're going to be interested in it. This is where the 50 period and the 200 period are sitting in around this 3250. It just didn't give us any more pullback. DocuSign, this is also another one that I'd say is a notable chart setup. One that we played around this 50 flat level, playing it like a trend line over on this day, and you can see it gaps down, it holds the trend line. It gives you this sort of wick into the middle of this red move, and then it breaks over top of that 50 half with a nice green candle, and then it respects it. It wicks right back down in the 50 half before it moves. And now, is this a confirmed higher low? Well, it's a nice green candle that's coming in. If this is able to push over, call it this 54.70, call it 55. If this gets over 55, we don't see why these confirmed higher lows, respecting this sort of uptrend, can't be something that pushes up towards where we think is the true breakout level, which is 67. Wicks up there. It's at the triple top. It tries to gap up to it, gets rejected from that level. If this wants to start catching some strength, we think that this name can catch a bid up into those 60s, which is what we're going to be looking for with DocuSign. So a couple names that we have been watching. Weight Watchers. You know, it would be nice just to say, yep, we we were playing this. We had the beautiful break around this 6 level, and we were just churning it up to the upside. Traded sideways for a long time, kind of fell off the radar for us. But then the same thing, you had this sort of descending little channel right here that it was setting up. It's not set perfectly, but you get the picture of once we put that green engulfing candle and tested towards this sort of flat top, you can see same story. I wouldn't be surprised if this was a Rivian all over again, where oh man, we should have traded it. It set a close right at 10, right at that breakout level. Let's just try it. You get the gap up. Oh, okay, now we're gonna wait for the 10 to come back in, and it just never comes back in. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Weight Watchers catch a bid. Anybody who was in short through this consolidation period is like, what the heck? I'm getting eaten alive by Weight Watchers? You gotta be kidding me. Well, sometimes that's part of the game. Stocks that you think are just unrealistic to move higher do. And when that happens, somebody's losing money. Not everybody can win on a stock. Yeah, that's the way I'd see it. And looking at T-Doc, continuing that strength, I'd like to see it pull back in towards that 26 where I might try it. But sometimes when you just can't get the courage to hold, sometimes it's just better just to stay away from some of the names that maybe you're not getting the greatest read on. But Lucid, looking back over at Lucid, pulling back in, this is sort of where that first entry was for me today. Averaged up, so on the previous day we tried 701s and 795. It caught a bit up. We had a one print up towards these 720s. Well, now we had a fill in around 714 today, and now out of the money on those shares. But still think that is reasonable setup. The red engulfing candle, maybe not the greatest look, but actually pulling into the middle of this green move. Your half is at 708, give or take, and you got good support building in around this 7. So, is it going to be able to catch a bid off of that area? We're gonna find out. And I'd say my same stop is probably going to get moved up just briefly, but playing it like this trend line. So when this trend line gives up, we're also going to give up on it, which is going to suck because for all I know, it wicks down into these six. For all I know, maybe I get the courage to hold a stop down to 650s. But the deeper you run that stop, if that stop gets executed, then you're out. You just lose more money. So that's a risk that comes along with it. But let's take a look elsewhere. We haven't really been putting orders out there early in the day, and a lot of stuff has been moving. So let's see if we can find some plays. I would say plug is a name we haven't talked about in a little while, but actually a gap fill took place today on the money off this 1150. If I was watching it more closely, maybe I would have tried it, but what I'm actually going to be on the bid for is off this 1125 is where we're going to start playing it. The closer it gets to the bottom end of this uptrend, and I like this sort of setup for a breakout catalyst where you get quick movement is when you have tight channels. Because once it breaks that channel one way or the other, normally you get a nice move. Uh, but the trend has been down without question. We've had beautiful, beautiful outs above 13, multiple outs above 13, multiple outs even around where the current price is at right now. That's the beauty with getting golden entries is that it doesn't matter where you sell when you're taking profits. To you, it's more about trimming the levels. But coming back in, we know that we talk about that middle ground as sort of that positive strength. Well, here's your positive break coming in around this 975. You pull back into the area, respects the uptrend, sets up this flat top and breakout. Well, now pulling right back in sort of towards that area. If it were to keep coming down, all it would take is a little bit of a bid to catch, and it starts sloping up. A notable move to the downside that we haven't talked about is end phase. End phase has been a name I talk about on the live stream every day. Hold on, I gotta sneeze. Ooh, man. Enphase has been a name we talked about on the live stream every single day. You know, trading inside this descending channel, it's honestly would be a U call because there's a bear catalyst and there is a bull catalyst. And my bull catalyst is that all I want to see is this uptrend hold. So anything close to this uptrend, I'm going to keep adding to it. Uh, you know, maybe I've had some ads up in these 170s that aren't the greatest, but we definitely had some good ads down here in the 160s. So anything in what's unique about this candle is that you know you gap down below some of these levels. It's like, oh, bearish, sell it. Well, now we're kind of putting this wick in, showing that there's still some buyers there around this 170 level. So I'm not gonna let this shake me out. We got the earnings after hours tomorrow. I'm playing it like an earnings play anyways. So all it would take during this earnings is if it gaps up, breaks this downtrend, gets over these 190 lows that it's been rejecting, and to see some movement to the upside. And what's unique about this uptrending channel right here is that if you look at the last since the 25th of April, it's actually got its own little channel that's been building right here. If I just took out everything and you can't see that long-term trend line, and we mark that and you mark this, you have a nice ascending channel. So all it would take is a gap up over top of this channel for it to start setting some new grounds. We think that's possible. So we're not going to let this shake us out just because it's down 4% on the day. We like the entry that we have, and we're going to stick with that entry. T-Doc now over 28. Yeah, it's going to suck looking at that all day. Gonna suck looking at that all day. Wish. Decent looking setup on Wish actually. A nice positive break coming on in, testing this area of support right here. Just the previous neckline break that could have been taken. It has a gap down here at 788. So that could be maybe an average in area. And then if it goes any lower, stop out maybe and try it again off 740 gap. But Wish is not a terrible setup. Looking at let's go look at that 15-minute chart. Actually taking out the highs on that candle. Not a half bad setup. Let's take a look back at that Tilray. Trading in right around this. Kind of giving you that look like maybe we're setting up some sort of flat bottom where if it breaks down you get some red engulfing. But I do like this setup that it has. And if we go look at the daily chart, where we gap up to, you can see what we're wicking down towards. And I would say that your resistance, mark the bottom of the green candle, wick, 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 gap over the level. Do we need to pull back in and hold 180s first? But kind of an indecision candle that's come on in, but 55 million shares traded. Earnings were today, so I don't know what was said in the earnings, but you know, it beat significantly on the revenue. EPS just not profitable yet. So not there uh, on a profitable level yet, but still a reasonable setup to maybe try playing in around these twos. You can stop out and try again later. But here this red candle's coming on in. You got the two green candle moves, decreasing volume on the way down. We got a minute 40 left. Is this going to be able to hold this two level? Lucid continuing to sort of reject this level up towards these 725s right here. But I'd say 730 is that reasonable set that you'd be looking for. Let's go see if there's any size on the tape. We got 130 lots on the bid, which really isn't the most for Lucid, not size like it can come in. As you can see, if we go to a daily chart, this name does get a lot of volume. Yesterday was a low volume day, and it put up 33.5 million. So we know that the volume can really get going on some of these larger green volume candles down here. We're looking at 74, 68, 72 million shares. So a lot of day left. We're at 17 million shares traded already on the day, and I'd say in near that 7 level could potentially be an entry that could be worthy. This candle turning green at the start. Let's watch this candle, and I'm not inclined to add more, but if it does come on in and start showing a hold of that 7, I know it would be below my EMAs, but we think that this is a reasonable name and a reasonable setup. Maybe for me, I'd say my scenario is different, but maybe playing the trend line could be a reasonable option. 230 watts on 6. But really right in the middle of that green move, you can see it, that first candle push. If those same buyers want to start coming on in off of 6, I think that's a reasonable area to see some buyers come in. Pack W given a gap up, probably something to do with earnings. I'm sure that has to do with some write-offs. A huge decrease in revenue. I don't even know why this would be based off some earnings reports that I've seen. If a normal company were to put a huge miss like that, where they have missed by 67%, whether that be 62%, they would have a gap down of 27%, not up 27%. But maybe there's some stuff that was said in the call, or who knows? Who knows? We're just gonna take this alert off because we're gonna be watching this today. I don't have to go into work till later, so probably gonna be a live stream later on after I get lunch. We'll take a break and then we'll come right back to it. But giving up 06s right now. Let's see if this can start wicking towards 7. 200 lots basically off these 04s. Is it going to start being able to respect it? Who knows? Comp also been a strong name. We go look at the daily chart. We talked about it yesterday, how it wicked above this sort of flat top right here off these 425s and continuing that green candle. And yesterday's candle, even a wick, so it could scare some people out, but now testing back up to that same range. Not a half bad setup. BDRX, I'd say this is confirmed a channel break. I shouldn't say confirmed because it keeps rejecting this area, but this is a very interesting uh, play. As it's continued to respect this uptrend, you can see the resistance that it's continued to have around this 7 flat range. And this was also a name that we were playing. We were trading this, and we were able to make a little bit of money on it. Whether it's going to get a continuation or not, I think it's a reasonable setup to maybe try and punch along. Reason being is because both of these gaps to the upside, if it were to start going, clear outs off at 10, and we're talking about it at 7 right now. And then, if it made a run for the next gap, which is the flat bottom break that it hasn't been able to test up towards, you're looking at 15. So almost a triple up on the, or a double up on the name. It could be reasonable. I'd say SFIX has a reasonable trend line that's trying to be built. Potential breakout range around that 450 range, and reason being is just mark this wick top right around that 450. You could even say your early break would be this 430 range. Oh, let's go take a look at some of the top volume names for today. XPEV number one in volume. Tilray giving up that two. Risk reward wise, I'd say, you know, give it 5-10 pennies from this two range isn't a half bad trade. Lucid got as low as 702. You see what it looks like when you break trend lines. Gets very nasty. There's your trend line break. Boom. Just a nice stair step to the downside. Lucid still wicked towards down that 7. Affirm, really giving up the ghost right here. Coming in towards this trend line, is this going to be something that's worth trying? Red engulfing to the downside normally isn't my first uh, choice to try. Uh, and maybe this wick, maybe given the idea of double top, but still holding good strength. We think that it's possible that it can wick as it's wicked into these levels multiple times. We're not going to give up on that one just yet. But running a deep stop underneath 1650, I think is probably going to be my out for the name. So as close to that 1650, maybe we give it the green candle right there. If it does want to pull back in, if we get stopped out and it pulls back into 1480, that's a gap that I would try. Forward approaching closer, report to after hours tomorrow. Payment on September 1st. That's an awful long payment date. But we're looking for this to come on back in towards that 13 area. But right in the middle ground of that strength right there. So are some buyers going to be able to come in on forward? Tough to say. ELBM looks like a retracement back down to the gap. Looks reasonable. Sun W, really a decent looking chart as it was able to hold this sort of neckline at 160. It got as high as 85 yesterday. .3M, nice continuation candle off of this sort of neckline break and earnings play. Catching a bid more to the upside. Say a nice notable move would probably be Geo. Nice hold of these sevens. were some good ads. One thing I'm not really noticing on these movers is any oil plays. I don't think there was any notable earnings uh, for oil, but I know on either Thursday or Friday, I believe XOM is Friday pre-market. But XOM actually uh, weaker compared to other oil plays, so maybe a relief rally in that name. But you can see the descending channel. You see a couple different uptrends that we have drawn on the name. But oil being strong, I see oil as a nice continuation play. Whether it needs to pull back into 77.5 or not, we think that we see oil print over 80s sometime in the near future. Till right underneath of that 2, sell the frowny face until it starts giving you this curl. Xewa catching a bid up to these 575s on some increased volume. We'll see if this can catch a bid, and maybe looking for that washout top up to those 580s could be a reasonable order. But we like to hold for this name as we think we can print 6 on it. One that is going to kill us though is this checkpoint software. we really thought that we'd be able to get this one pulled back into these low 120s. It doesn't look like it's going to give us that entry. Honestly, if you're looking for a play, I'd say this APLS earnings coming up, huge gap down. Looks like they had to have had some sort of acquisitions because they're expected 70 million, but still not profitable yet. Maybe there's something to do with the news that's saying that yeah, we're not even going to be close to that 70 million. But this one has been nothing but red engulfing to the downside since this gap down. But this is actually coming into sort of this support range over here, where I'd say 30 is reasonable. But this is why these trend lines, if you're playing them, uh, you can see this put a red engulfing right down to it. If somebody was saying, hey, we bounced off this trend line every single time, let's try it at 52. Well, once you get below that area, well, then you have gap fill buyers coming in off of 43. Well, there weren't any that came in off 43, and this is where you've got this continuation to the downside. But for this to be just be trading up at 95 a couple weeks back, and to look at it down at 30 now, maybe that one could take a little bit more uh, of a dive into that company and see what the heck's going on. Lucid still down at these 7s. Continuing the wick into that 730. We think if that name ever prints above 730, we think it's gonna be on. Docs catching a little bit of resistance, thank the Lord. RBLX rejecting those 40s again. Are we going to see the same type of buyers coming in off of this trend line? It doesn't look as likely, but you know, if the buyers do come in and we get over this 40.25, that's what we're trying to play for. Disney, kind of the same story. Uh, is it going to be able to hold these 85s as support? If not, we got an 84 gap marked. MRO showing the strength to get back to that gap. If we see this hold above that gap fill, 15 seconds left in this candle, uh, maybe looking good for a continuation on an oil name at least. RRC Range Resource Corporation, they did have an earnings on Monday that I didn't even see. But a nice setup here on building this sort of U shape. You can see the catalyst for the U that's being built, top support in these middle 30s. Lucid giving up 7. For the time being, we still think it can hold 7s, but kind of shocked. You know, when it was up here at this 728, we were really thinking that, you know, this can really start to break out from here. I'd say as clear of a channel as it gets here on 10 cent, really testing that top end of the range. Is this going to be able to give them move through that downtrend is the real question. Farmers reported today. Let's go take a look at that farmers earnings report. This has been one of my longer holds. Just looking through this briefly. Trying to find the share count. Shares, slim share dilution. Very slim. But we'll continue to hold it based off of strength alone. I think it's worthy of it. Should have some good support in towards those 13.25s. Zila still sitting around these 11.25s. I'm just going to adjust that so that we get all these points of contact. Say underneath 1650 is a reasonable stop area. Lucid trying to hold these sevens. Is it going to be able to? Doesn't look like it's going to off of this look alone. Roblox coming right back into this same support level. FVR, we're looking for this to just kind of trade sideways around this 28, but if we're able to wick down into 2750s, I think that's where I'm going to be looking for some orders off of that gap. I'd say MRO has a notable chart setup, puts this red engulfing candle down through 45s and is able to just hold like a glove, just trade sideways over the last 2 weeks. If this were to start catching a bid, how many of them have I showed you where you got this sort of ascending channel that's traded in a long period of time? And you know, this actually reminds me most of DAL, where I'd say here is your sort of ascending channel to the upside look that you have, and then you have a channel inside of that. If we go to DAL, you're going to see this sort of same look, where you had this longer term uptrend, and it traded sideways kind of inside of that channel kind of like this, and this could potentially be that sideways consolidation period. I don't know. I'm not comparing the two. The two are definitely not the same types of company, as airlines have really been catching a bid over the course of this year. Xela able to get over those 575s at day's high from yesterday. Is this going to be able to catch some momentum to the upside? We're going to find out. Odd continuing to catch a bid. Probably not the most ideal type of channel. Something like that. But reasonable up to those 55s. Geo continuing to catch a bid. Testing up towards the 750s. How's that for a nice flag pattern hold? Is it going to be able to build this U shape out? Maybe. Looking at the daily chart for BABA though, you can see the catalyst for this ascending channel right here. There's your tops. There's your bottoms. Probably not perfectly drawn, but you get the gist. Where I'd say I had a big day on what was it, Monday? I'd look at this as some sort of neckline, so being able to hold part of this green candle is a good start. Tilray giving up those 90s, are those at 2 significantly, wicking down into the middle of this open price. The go-to trade, I used to call this one. Setting up the flat top here at this 4 level. Xela able to get over top of these 580s for the time being. Maybe this is going to be something that we start trimming to the upside. Looking over at AFRM, we're going to put an alert underneath this 65 for AFRM. Let's look back at that roadblocks. Wicking in towards those 50s. That's sort of the level that we'd want to see hold. We can put an alert underneath 50s. And then we should go take a look back at Lucid. Lucid holding back over top of those 7, so wicking into towards that green move. We're really not interested in cutting this until it gives up this uptrend. So the 3 title names today, really not the fastest moving stock, so I can see how it could be boring. But that's part of. I'm really not interested in finding the ones that are moving just today. We're trying to find entries for the stocks that are going to move tomorrow or the next day. So I think these names represent that for the time being, but that doesn't mean that today is going to be all flashy. We'll keep it flashy when they start catching the bids. How about that? Wish pulled back into the middle of the green move, holding the 21 for the time being. Xela catching a bid. We're going to keep this one on watch, and we're actually going to go start taking a piece off of this one. Xela. See if we can get into those 90s, and we're going to be sitting there for a Now let's just take off a small piece right now, just in case we don't get this price. Almost $1 in the money on this trade. And we can go on the ask. Let's go off at 95 since we just respected that level. So we'll go 595s right in front of that 6 level. And if that gives us a fill, it gives us a fill. If it doesn't, you know, we're okay holding this back in. KRE continuing to hold near the top of the day, acting like it wants to push that price higher. Lucid still holding above that 7. You can see the catalyst for Zim here, right near this gap. Got very close to it this morning, a 1350 hold. This is why share dilution is bad. Boom, right off of the public offering. Gaps down through the trend line from a technical basis, right back in towards, what are the odds this prints down just a little bit further? I'd say a pretty good chance. I'd say it's also a good chance that it gives up and cracks that support. Baba really starting to catch a bid here. Giving you that curl. Geo tested up to that 750 range. Lucid still holding 7s right here. Man, Hibbit, can this just calm down? It's gonna let me know every single day. Why didn't you build your position in the mid 30s? It's gonna let me know every single day. Ziwa catching a little bit of a wick right there. Looks like it got as high as 89s. We took an 88 fill. Just a small trim, nothing crazy. Lucid still holding these 7s. Take a look at some of the volume movers. Tested that flat top on HBI. Siri moved all the ways back in, giving up all the gains through the levels. Affirm still holding that trend line, leaving a wick at that same area. RHI was an earnings report that we looked through yesterday. We thought it was actually a pretty good earnings report. They missed on revenue, it looks like, missed on EPS, but they still bought back a couple million shares. Enphase kind of giving up the ghost a little bit, giving up those 170s. The closer you get to this trend line, I'd say you got the A-OK. Seen that GRRR was still at 6 million shares traded, uh, which is still an awful lot. Saying that here was your initial move to the upside, coming back in. Tilray still sitting around these 90s, not looking the greatest. Like I said, I still think that risk reward, give it below 90s, could pan out for you still. Take a look at SoFi. Looks like junk. Intel reports after hours Thursday. Ziwa, 1 penny off of that print off 95s. Looks like a tap 95s. Go. I didn't feel anything. And there we did just get 95 printed. Oh, so ringing the register on Zila. Strong move. I'd say you got these lows in at 604 to 6 range, just marking this wick low right here. There's 6, and here we're coming right up to it right now. So let's maybe think about taking a piece off right off 6. And let's just go right on the bid off 6, or the ask at 6. Now over $1 in the money. No, I thought they had earnings soon. Apparently not. I'd say maybe AMD is traded sideways long enough where maybe if you wanted to, you could try this sort of support range. Earnings coming up. Uh, some of these AI companies have really taken off of those earnings, so maybe a potential play. Zila giving us that fill off of 6, so ringing the register yet again on Zila. We got 88s, 95s, and 6 prints today. And not slowing down through that 6. Volume really picking up. I'd say 615 is going to be this next area we think about trimming, which would be top end of this channel. There's 607, so let's just go on the ask. Take another piece off of 614. 614, let's go ahead and do it. Odd given the first red candle back in. No volume on the name though. Probably going to keep us away from it. Lucid giving up 7s, looking like, probably going to come back in, test this this uptrend or this trend line. Says we do have a report on BTI. I could have sworn I looked this morning and didn't see that. You guys know I've talked about BTI many times through this knife to the downside, but we did talk about playing around with this gap fill. So good shares off of this gap around this 32 level. We thought it was a no-brainer in terms of valuation, but just because something's fairly priced doesn't mean that it can't go lower. But let's go see if we can find this earnings report. Maybe I need to go to their investor relations. 2023 half-year results. Half-year results, the latest. It says we have an error. And it's not letting us pull this up, so let me try something else. Half-year press release. Here we are. So since we weren't really seeing anything, we'll quickly look over at RBLX. Right in around this 39.50 area. Is this going to be a trend line that can hold? Wicked in pretty close underneath of that, just briefly underneath of those 50s. Firm, we should go look at the same thing with the firm. Trying to hold that trend line, so that's all right. And Lucid, trying to hold these 7s. So those are the three that we have for the title names. We can look back at Zila. That's been the name that we've been printing. Got as high as 611. We're on the ask at 614. I'm not a fan of that wick with this huge amount of volume, and here's why. When we go to a 1 minute, really not the most amount of volume came out of that. So maybe we can still get some further movement to the upside. But let's zoom in. And let's make sure that we have BTI pulled up. See if we get this fill on Zila. Continuing to try to print higher. Alright, let's pull this report over here. I'm just gonna scroll down, make sure that they have financial reports on here. Jesus criminy. Talk about our earnings report, Jesus. Half year summary, revenue up 4.5%. Checks a box. All we were looking for was just to stay relative. EPS up 118%. That's a pretty reasonable number, I would say. Current rates versus 2022, so we know cigarettes is their main. Oh, they don't have the distribution yet. But there's your EPS year over year. 6% debt down to 42 billion. So let's pull this over right here, and we can just go look at the balance sheet where they go from. Yeah, I don't know the exact term. These seem like they are in euro numbers, so that's gonna have to be considered. Not the most ideal earnings report. I'm not used to looking at international earnings reports. Let's see if we can just find the financial statements and see some year over year numbers. Took out 6% of their net debt. Just want to find some financial statements. Financial statements, page 21. So here we are coming up on them. Income statement right here. So year over year, here's your 2022 to 2023. So by all means, that kind of checks a box in my opinion. Earnings per share. So I'm sure the year before they had some write-offs. I know that was the one time that their EPS actually dropped below their dividends that they paid out. I don't know what the equivalent in euro that their dividend is. Doesn't look like anything with the buybacks. Why do international companies have to have earnings like this? Here's a cash flow statement. So their EPS grew the 118% year over year, but you can see the cash flow, cash generated from operating activities, a slight increase. So I do like seeing that. There's your increase net, taking out taxes. And we said from the beginning, as long as they're able to continue growing, we like this as an investment. Investment, not a trade. We're punching long. You know, these earnings are just a mess. I don't even know if I can do it. There's no reason you should have a freaking 50-page earnings report. I feel bad for whoever had to put this together, because Lord. Maybe the presentation's better, but yeah, I've seen about enough of that. Ziwa giving us that fill off 16 or off of 14s right there. So let's go back into this. Yeah, that was just an absolute mess. The one downfall I'd say I would take from international companies is that their earnings reports are just up. I don't even know what I just looked at right there. That was gave me a headache just thinking about some of this stuff. Roadblocks crossing over an alert. You know, I think a stop is going to be reasonable underneath of this wick low. BDRX putting that green candle in. KRE still trying to fight around these 50s. Zim trying to test up, giving a stair step look, testing up to those 14s. Alibaba trying to push higher, giving you this nice U look. Is it going to be able to break 97s? Lucid still trying to hold these 7s. The more I just trade sideways like this, the more I would say, hey, this can still catch a bid and, you know, build this U shape, test back up to these 725, 730 range, that's where we're more bullish on it. You know, you can say we're bullish down here near the trend line, but I'm bullish near the breakout level. 'Cause I don't know if it's going to actually make a push up higher or not. RBLX still holding those 50s, so let's re-put in an alert underneath those 43s, which is the wick low for that. And we will think about an exit if we come back in. You know, maybe we can try one ad off of this before we get a exit of the position. We have quite some time before this earnings report still. Zila right back in underneath that 614. Wicked as high as 17s, respected the top end of this channel. You're okay, puppy. Take a look at Boeing, up 5% on the day. We still think we're going to be able to find something that we think is worth trading on the day. Lucid's still trying to hold these 7s. You know, maybe an add as soon as we start getting over this 707 could be something. But let's see if we can hold 7s first. Baba catching a bid up to those 97s. Docks back up above 34s. Is this the area that we could think about adding? Let's put an alert back in for the retest of those 33 3/4. I see we have an oil name reaching Dino. It's actually a pretty good look. Retest of this sort of neckline break. False break, tries to hold, gives up the levels. Retest of the initial neckline break, which was a positive break. Boom, get the leg higher. Potentially a channel start. Something like that. You know, why not? Let's just throw a small order out for this and throw a stop in on the name. Let's see what the size is looking like. 200 lots. Get an entry into Tilray here and see if we can test it. And we're going to put our stop in at 87s. We'll go 86. We'll give it one extra penny. See if that's able to hold or not. Zila given that wick top, so really good cut off that 614. We'll see if that has to come on back in. Where I'd say off of 575, all our trims on today are above that 75, so maybe a retest of that 75 is a reasonable add. Lucid's still trying to hold these 7s. Is it going to be anything worth adding more to? I don't know. RBLX hasn't given us an add yet, or an alert yet. It got close. Is this going to be able to hold this sort of trend line right here? You know, it's tough to say. you can see the catalyst for your channel playing around near this trend line. We're not trying to get shaken out of it yet. Even though it's going against us, we still think that we are playing the right name if it can catch a bid. And continuing higher, so a nice hold of those 50s. Nikola caught a nice bid, pulled back into the level, now holding. You can see the support level we're trying to play here on Tilray. If it ends up stopping us out, it does. Won't be too big of a hit. Lucid continuing to try to catch a bid here. Right around these 7s. Is this going to be able to hold? We think we have the trend line. I don't see any other way that we could draw this out. So as it continues to hold that 7, the more I'm going to be bullish on it for a push up to that 730s. So right now, from that 730 breakout, we think it's trading at a 4% premium from current price. Because once it gets over 730, we think some longs are punching in, and we're going to make this run for at least 8. So if you're looking for that breakout price from current price up to 8, we're looking at 15%. So I mean, you guys can laugh at me for playing a name that's not moving at all until it makes that move. I've seen it 1,000 times. That doesn't mean I'm right, but this is my style of trading. Doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Give me just a moment, guys. I gotta make a call before I forget. And we are back. I'd say a notable move is Tilray. You know, we can start trying to trim this off of like 97s if we really wanted to. So on the $40 gap up that we had right here, just a straight sideways consolidation now up to that 21. I would expect this one to just trade sideways the whole way through. You know, I have a small piece and haven't even looked at why it's up. So maybe that's a reasonable thing to try and do. I'm sorry if that was loud, guys. I couldn't even say that with a straight face without giving at least a breakout laugh right there. Silicon Motion stock soars on China unexpectedly. Unexpectedly is the word that it uses. Unexpectedly approves sales to Max Linear. Unexpectedly. Now look at my chart here. We're going to go to a daily chart and let's just clear out that whole right side of the chart. We're going to mark this bottom right here. Gaps up, never has the weakness to fill this gap. Now let's slowly move to the right. Slowly, one candle at a time, we're coming in. Getting damn close. Whoa. Whoa, look at that gap. Wow, filled it almost on the money. Wait, where's the candles at? We're on today. I see the volume. Where's... Oh, it's all the ways up here. How unexpected. Oh, God. Lord. I mean, I crack myself up. I crack myself up. No, I'm not calling myself a genius for that, but all I'm saying is that we get a direct correlation gap fill right there, and it unexpectedly, quotation marks, unexpectedly gets approved sales of Max Linear. Wow. Just wow. Oh, you don't need to go outside just yet. Just wait, just wait. Well, let's take a look at some of these other moves. Tilray up to 195. We feel we had a pretty decent ad right there. Like I said, risk reward was there. Is it going to be able to continue this bid or just hold this level? We're giving it down to 86. So already telling myself from that 93, 92 entry that we're looking at, you know, 3.25% risk for something that can give us a move higher. You know, we'll take it. It's not terrible. And now a nice green candle coming in. So really confirming that level. And maybe this is where we can try and play this. If it comes back into this range, we can start getting more aggressive with it. Does this get back over twos today? And I'd say here's your body candle, which is the wick low. Let's just get ready to throw this limit off of 198. Oh, my dog does have to go outside. And how unfortunate. RBLX pushed up to that shortable level, which is also wicking into the bodies of these candles at the open right here. Does that get rejected and push it down lower? We're going to find out. Okay, I'll be right back. It's not like we got anyone watching anyways. But I'll be right back and just going to let the dogs out real quick. And we are back. So Ray still holding, got as high as 96s. We're looking to start playing this trim level off of 98s, coming on back in. That's reasonable, expected to have some short in the middle of this red move, or some at least selling pressure. If I was thinking about cutting 98, somebody else was too. But I'm going to move that stop up to 88. Save me a little bit of risk. KRE actually able to get this leg up higher, so let's see if I can keep running. I can see Lucid holding those sevens. Okay, well, that being said, nothing's really giving us some moves as of right now. The only thing was Zila. Off of this 614, maybe that gives us another leg higher. We're going to find out. So, that's going to call it for the live stream. Appreciate anybody who tuned in. And maybe we'll live stream later on in the day. We'll get some more people tuned in.